All right, welcome to the GREAT XR650L rack shootout. This is the new PMR rack that I purchased so I could get rid of this big honkin' moose rack. This is the Moose Expedition rack. It's a nice rack. It's got a little bit extra mount for the subframe to the frame, but when I measured it from the fender to the outside edge, it was over 5 inches. And it was just too large. I would kick my foot on either side, getting on or off. And so what I wanted to do was replace it with a thinner rack, because I don't really need this big guy. So I bought this PMR rack. And one of the main reasons, let me set this down, that I bought the PMR rack was because it allowed me to use the original turn signal mounts. So it would mount like that, because you have a 6mm hole that goes onto the frame, and then this nub fits right into this 8mm hole and allows the turn signals to run like that, which is really cool. That's what I wanted. The bad thing is this rack is then held on by 3 6mm bolts, and even though everything was tight, it still had some movement in it. And one of the things I wanted to do was put on one of those extra fuel canisters, I forgot what they're called, on the back for some of my rides. And it just didn't seem sturdy enough for that. So I could come down here, make sure, run a different setup on my little camera today. So I could run here an extra bolt, and that would give it a secure mounting, and then it wouldn't move at all. You know, if so, very little, but it wouldn't move at all. The problem is, then I have to figure out what to do with my turn signals, and there's not really enough meat to drill it in here, so I'm kind of screwed. So. And then one of the other things, if I was to keep this rack, which I'm not, I'm going to send it back to eBay, is, don't know if you can see, but this little nub hangs out over this part of the rack. This little nub here hangs over this part of the rack. I'll put my hand here. Let me put this here to kind of contrast. And I actually cut my pant leg on that stupid thing. So if I was to keep it, which I'm not, I'm sending it back. I purchased it through eBay. PMR X has a good warranty. They say they'll take it back, no questions asked. But I would actually grind that, put this rubber plug back in, and make this flush. But since I'm not keeping it, it's not an issue. So anyway, so that's the deal with this rack here. The other's too big. This one's with the 3 mounting tabs is not really sufficient enough, I feel, to carry fuel and a little pack on the back. And so I went back to, actually, it was my first choice in racks. And it is this rack. And it is this rack. This rack is a Nomadic rack. And the first thing pulling it out of the box is, Jesus, thing's light. And the other thing I like about it is it mounts the same way the PMR rack mounts, except, there we go, so, I don't know if you can see, but mounts the same way. I have 6mm hole, 8mm hole, and then they give you, if I get this thing out of the way, they give you a mount for your turn signals right there. So I have 6, 8mm, that'll mount to the frame. I have a separate turn signal mount. I won't have this rubber cushion, but at least it'll feed right on there. That's kind of awkward. Yeah, so it'll be right there at the bottom. And so it'll still look factory, because I don't want to give up my big turn signals, because I want to be seen on the street, and I don't want the little guys. So that's why I went back with this. This was actually my first choice, but then I liked the way the PMR rack used the original turn signal mounts. The other thing is this has a countersunk hole here, so it'll sit flush. The PMR rack, there was a little bit of a screw head sticking up right here. So not the end of the world, but you know, just one of those things, kind of unsightly. So anyway, so I'm going to install this guy. I'm going to have to pull the seat off so I can rerun the turn signal wires through this hole and then back under the seat. But this is where I'm at now. There we go. And just for a little comparison, I got my magic postal scale here, and it's sitting flat. So let's pull this out here. Make sure this thing, I'm running a different setup on my little hat cam, and I got to make sure I'm getting this, because I'm not going to pull this thing back off. But anyway, there we go. We're at 0. So let's start with the moose. The moose rack with the hardware comes in at 4 pounds, 12 ounces. Okay. And the PMR rack comes in with the mounting hardware at 3 pounds, 3 ounces. And the other thing I didn't like about the PMR, or the PMR rack, is this sits in between. The taillight sits here, the rack sits here. It never actually sat flat. I would have had to grind this at an angle, because when it was mounted, you know, this is going to be exaggerated again, but it was only catching on one of the sides, you know, so see if I get that there. It wasn't sitting flush like this on the flat surface. It was actually sitting at an angle. So it was only catching about, it was missing about a quarter of this spacer. So that was kind of funky too. So, but I could have ground it, you know, and like I said, if I was going to keep it, I would have ground, get this where it's contrast, I would have ground this flush and put the plug back in, because this would actually snag my leg. So anyway, so we had 3.3 with the PMR rack and the mounting hardware, because you got to have mounting hardware included, because that's what you're hanging off the end of your bike. And this is that, I think it's Nomadic racks. And this is cool. It's just aluminum, powder coated, bent. It's going to be plenty strong enough for what I need. I like it's got a little bit longer feature. It's meant for like the other PBR? PMR. I'm thinking PBR. Pabst Blue Ribbon. I need a PBR. So anyway, the Nomadic rack with the hardware comes in at 1 ounce, 1 pound, 9 ounce. Without it, you're sitting at 1 pound, 6 ounces. This thing is half the weight of the, or more than half the weight than the other racks. And you know, one of their advertisements is, you know, you can use it mounts with 5-position mounting, which the PMR rack does. I mean, these holes are the same. It's just that there's no place for me to mount my turn signals after I do that. So where this one has the Nomadic rack, it does have the optional turn signal hole. And let me get white back here so you can see. There we go. So you have your 6mm hole, your 8mm hole. There we go. And then your turn signal mount. So I'm going to install this. I'm sending the other ones back. The original moose rack I'm going to throw on Craigslist. But I'm getting ready to install this thing. It's going to be a simple install except for removing the seat so I can disconnect the turn signal wires, because I have to run them through this hole and then out the other side. Then I can mount the turn signal to there. But you know, all these racks are good. It's just, for me, this is going to be the ideal setup. Yep, and that will mount just like that. So let me get my phone. Like I said, this is giving me a different angle than, there you go. So this is the way it's going to run, and it covers up most of that ugly tailor light. So and there's nothing absolutely nothing for me to catch on my pant leg or anything, which is nice, which is what I wanted. So this is going to be the better deal overall, is this Nomadic rack over the PMR and over the, Jesus Christ, and over the Moose Expedition rack. So I'm going to get this thing mounted, and then I'm going to go pick something up, but I actually got to mail some stuff off. But anyway, that's the Great Rack Shootout. You see what they look like on the bikes. I know the lighting's not the best, but I'm going to get this thing mounted before I have to go and call it good. But one of the other things is this has more mounting connectors. The PMR rack, it just had a frame that came up to here, and this one actually has other areas, these little strengthening holes to mount stuff. You got holes all over the place, so I kind of like that better. And it's a nice flat. I mean, if I looped this thing ever, or if I had to go off the back of this thing, it would cause me very little harm. So that's all I got for you. I just thought I'd show you that before I mount it, and then I'm off and running around. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.